Chapter 12, Alamein to Stalingrad, July to September 1942. By the summer of 1942, the Second World War had been raging for almost 3 years and showed little sign of abating. The conflict that started back in 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland had now spread far beyond the confines of Europe, and as the Axis powers sought to expand their vast empires, the battlefields of war stretched from Africa to Asia. With Germany, Italy and Japan now united against the Allies, fighting had broken out in every corner of the globe, and the struggle continued across the war-torn continents, while at sea, naval battles were being fought for control of supply routes. As the Axis tightened their stranglehold on the previously tranquil waters of the Mediterranean, there was an ever-growing risk that the Allies fighting in North Africa would be cut off, and the future of their Western Desert Offensive was far from assured. Italian and German troops were now posing a very real threat to British interests in Africa, as they struck deep into the desert landscape of Egypt, reaching El Alamein just outside Cairo. Within the shortest of time frames, there was little left standing between the Axis powers and the Suez Canal, which was the pathway to the oil fields of the Middle East. If the Allies were to stand any real chance of victory in World War II, the battles that lay ahead to secure North Africa would be absolutely critical. Ironically, though, the leader of Nazi Germany's attentions would not be entirely focused on North Africa. Adolf Hitler's determination to destroy communism proved to be rather stronger than his desire to penetrate Egypt. On the Eastern Front, as the German tanks rolled further into Russia, by July 1942, the Battle of Stalingrad was well underway. Facing a bitter conflict, Joseph Stalin, the Russian leader, called for a great patriotic war against the enemy, and with the full might of the Soviet Red Army to contend with, the troops of Hitler's Third Reich were destined to be occupied for some time to come. And all the while in the Far East, despite the immense territorial gains of Hitler's Japanese allies, the tide that had so far been running in the Axis favour was slowly beginning to turn against them. Out at sea, the Battle of Midway had proved to be a crucial victory for the Allies in the Pacific theatre of war. The Americans had caused irreparable damage to the fleet of Japan, spurring US soldiers on, who were now ready for their first offensive in the Solomon Islands. The African continent had been a field of conflict between Western empires long before the outbreak of the Second World War. And while European colonies were established across the continent, by the early 20th century there was little left that the native inhabitants could call their own. The last remaining independent states were the tiny Republic of Liberia to the west and the ancient Kingdom of Ethiopia to the east. But in the 1930s, when the climate in Europe became increasingly unsettled and new leaders hungry for power emerged, the autonomy of these countries would also be under threat. The Suez Canal was of great strategic importance, as it connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, providing a pathway to the rich oil fields of the Middle East. It also provided the shortest ocean link between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, and had originally been important in helping the European powers govern their colonies. Malta was particularly important to the North African campaign, as it provided the only Allied base between Gibraltar and Egypt and was the last threat to Rommel's supply lines from Europe. The British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, regarded the island an unsinkable aircraft carrier, of course, but as Rommel's troops made progress in Libya, beating back the Western Desert Force and heading eastwards towards Egypt, the Axis hold on the Mediterranean would tighten, and by 1942, almost no ships would be able to get through to Malta. Hitler and Mussolini lacked the resources to take both Cairo and Malta at the same time, so they decided to batter and starve the island into submission. It would become one of the most intensely bombed areas in the war, with around 250 raids per month in the first 6 months of 1942. The destruction to the island was unimaginable, and thousands of people were killed or injured in the attacks. Their devotion to the Allied cause, however, did not go unnoticed, and they were awarded the George Cross for their heroism, while the American President, Franklin D. Roosevelt, described the island as one tiny bright flame in the darkness.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?